You oughta been there when Johnny run the pew. You oughta been there when Johnny run the pew. Granny was a-shoutin' and Papa was too, and you oughta been there when Johnny run the pew. It happened at a church in a Carolina town. You oughta been there when the fire came down. Uncle Bill jumped up and he run down the aisle. You could hear Johnny holler for a quarter of a mile. You oughta been there when Johnny run the pew. You oughta been there when Johnny run the pew. Granny was a-shoutin' and Papa was too, and you oughta been there when Johnny run the pew. Johnny was a bashful Christian man, never said much, never raised his hand. Sitting on the pew he was always quiet till the fire came down in the church that night. You oughta been there when Johnny run the pew. You oughta been there when Johnny run the pew. Granny was a-shoutin' and Papa was too, and you oughta been there when Johnny run the pew. Shiny black shoes from the front to the back on the top of the pew. The choir was a-singing, everybody in a daze. 14 members and a deacon unsaved. You oughta been